Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Tuesday. It's September. It's Tuesday, September 3rd. Put them all together, and that spells, I don't know what. Trouble, I guess. Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024. Time for another show. We were away yesterday from the microphone anyway. It was Labor Day. We celebrated it by not laboring. That's what you're supposed to do. And it was a good day for a day off. Nice day, nice weather. I had a good time. I was just kind of exhausted. I've been doing a lot of extra work, extracurricular activities lately, eating up an awful lot of time and causing a little bit of stress. And, I needed a down day to just relax. We had that nice transition to fall weather. I don't know how long it's going to last. Probably about 90 degrees again pretty soon. But it looks like a good week coming up with rain in the forecast just in time to ruin next weekend. So, your typical forecast, everything nice, beautiful day, like I said, walking around outside. It was interesting. Nothing. Well, all right, okay. I went to was walking into parks today, just the regional, parks, athletic fields and stuff like that. I wasn't going for a major hike through the woods or anything, but just, I was out in the area and, walking through a different athletic field park than the one immediately adjacent to my house. And what was interesting, no baseball or softball games going on, though enormous and just luxurious baseball and softball fields for the kids. I assume they play some Little League games on there as well. I don't know whether the local high school, they all have their fields on campus these days. And it reminded me a little bit about growing up in suburban New Jersey, way back when, so late 70s, early 80s, and playing Little League. Those were some raggedy ass fields that we played in, barely carved out base paths in a, maybe half mowed field of grass somewhere. It was it was sufficient for what we were doing. We're in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade baseball players, but these fields are fantastic, and actually reminded me a little bit of seeing the Bad News Bears movies when I was a kid, and seeing what I guess supposedly Little League baseball was like in California leagues. And I was like, well, first of all, they get a full uniform. We got a T-shirt, I think. So we played our games in jeans or whatever the hell you were wearing, and a print shop T-shirt where they would iron on the letters of the name of your team and maybe a number if you were lucky, and full uniforms, dugouts, etc. Where are these kids getting dugouts? Chain link fencing, protecting them from getting hit in the face with a baseball. I think we had chain link backstops, and that was about it. And the rest of it was, we put some cement in the ground and some stumps, and then we put a bench across it on each side. There's no shading. These fields, fantastic, beautifully manicured, actual home run wall, and huge protection for families, bleachers to sit on and cheer. It really was something. So anyway, point is that none of those fields were being used. Not really the point. The point is it's beautiful. We have these lovely fields. What was being played, I guess it's not organized school baseball, softball time yet. And when did we play Little League? Probably in the spring, right? So I guess, I don't know. Now these kids today with their traveling teams, and it costs $5,000 to play a season with some of these teams, whatever. And kids are looking for scholarships, but no games going on. But what was going on, 2 youth cricket league games. I've said before, we have an enormous South Asian population here, and it's among the South Asian population that cricket is so enormously popular. I imagine it would be just as popular if we had a huge Australian population, but we don't. And I don't know where they're hanging out. But at any rate, it was really kind of interesting to see that enough youth interest that they were playing 2 games at once on these cricket fields. And I had just recently, I guess, picked up the basics of cricket from a YouTube video that came out or was circulated widely when the United States actually did considerably better than it's ever done in one of these international cricket competitions, largely because we now have a sizable South Asian population that actually plays the game. I don't know. It was really kind of interesting and fun to watch, and kids played well, and it was interesting just to see it being played out there in the fields with empty baseball fields all around them. Anyway, something. That was my weekend, and it was a long one, and I hope yours was enjoyable as well. Maybe they were playing, I don't know, tiddlywinks or something equally esoteric around you, bocce perhaps. I have no idea. What ethnic sporting events might be happening in your area, but hopefully you had an enjoyable weekend as well. Lots to catch up on. It is Tuesday, one of those Tuesdays it feels like a Monday, but then you realize you're well into the week and you're behind on things. So we'll see whether Tuesday works for our normal schedule. It's usually a Joan McCarter day. Tuesdays that feel like Mondays are often a bit of a gamble. And we'll see what kind of activity level over at Daily Kos is happening early this morning, and whether she's needed on an emergency basis or what have you. But we'll leave the door open for her in the last segment as usual, and keep things casual. There's plenty to talk about. It's been a big weekend. So probably could have snuck a show in yesterday with all the things that are happening. And I think maybe as between Pocket and my social media feeds over the weekend, there's like 25 things that I was trying to remind myself I definitely wanted to put on today's show, and we'll see how many of them I can get to today. Let's see. One thing that struck me over the weekend, this news, I think we had this news earlier, but now it's now confirmed that the alleged fundraising event that Donald Trump was going to sponsor and hold, although not attend apparently, for January 6th rioters, defendants, and their families at his Bedminster Golf Club has been postponed. I think we got this news at some point earlier, but they were, I guess, struggling on to see if they could put the thing together and make it work, and they can't. And there's no reason given in the story, or rather they report that no reason was given on the club's website or on any Trump websites or anything like that. And I think the reason is that an embarrassing one, and that's why they didn't own up to it, and the New York Times was not interested in guessing. But I have this piece from over the weekend. Fundraiser for January 6th rioters at Trump's golf club is postponed. Now, you might think, and they try to sort of insinuate that the postponement is, actually this would be politically bad and politically embarrassing for a presidential candidate to have a fundraiser for anti-government rioters. But of course, as you know, in Trump world, they portray their anti-government rioting as pro-government rioting, pro-them governing rioting. But anyway, Donald J. Trump, as it says in the subheader here, did not plan to attend the gala event. That's how important he is to you. I mean, yeah, the whole thing it should be taken as a little bit insulting by January 6th people, but they don't allow themselves to get insulted by anything that Trump does to them, like cause them to be thrown in jail, or if they are ever reminded he was president for 2 solid weeks, none of which they spent in jail because it took a long time to get around to these guys and arrest them. But he could have pardoned them knowing that they were all going to end up in jail within the 2 weeks before he relinquished eventually the presidency. But I mean, I suppose he could argue that I really thought that we were going to see all these people not be charged because it was so awesome and pro law and order for you to punch cops and drag them down the stairs and beat them. Anyway, he did not plan to attend the gala event at his venue in Bedminster, New Jersey, but it highlighted his efforts to rewrite the history of the attack on the Capitol. So here's the way the reporting on it goes. Alan Feuer covered it for The Times, which, yes, unfortunately, we still need. at least to gather up the news and be able to shake our fists in the air and curse the way the coverage goes. A gala event to raise money for some of the rioters who attacked the Capitol on January 6, 2021, set to take place on Thursday at former President Donald J. Trump's golf club in New Jersey, has been postponed, according to the event website. What is the event website? It is sponsored, this thing is, by one Stand in the Gap Foundation, and the website is standinthegap.foundation/events, in case you want to look at this particular event, or I don't know if they have any other events. But it was postponed. And again, just to read that again, because you did hear it correctly, a gala event to raise money for the rioters. Here you go, rioters. What you need is money. While Mr. Trump had not been planning to attend the soiree, billed as the J6 Awards Gala, and I think this is where we picked up on it and read about it the other day. It's an awards gala, like the scam things from like the Who's Who Among American High School Students or whatever other scam books they used to sell to you. Oh, you're in it. You're going to be listed. You'll want to buy 5 copies, one for all of your grandparents and et cetera, and it's only $50 a pop. Just send us $250, $500, what have you, and we'll give you a book where we printed your name in a directory of thousands of names. All these people gave us $500. Well, anyway, the J6 Awards Gala, the event attracted attention for the way it reinforced the strong connections Trump, has maintained with those who stormed the Capitol on his behalf at an awkward moment, just as his campaign to return to the White House enters its final stages. Of course, Trump people don't consider that to be an awkward moment. This is something they're leaning into. The normies are like, yeah, remember that time when they were like, F everything and we can just burn the Capitol down? That guy should be president. The event's website did not provide a reason for the delay or mention a new date when it might take place, but the primary planner, Sarah Maccabee, it's M-C-A-B-E-E, Maccabee, who, not Maccabee like Judah Maccabee, but maybe they're named after them, I don't know, who runs a nonprofit organization, which probably should be investigated about its nonprofit status, called the Stand in the Gap Foundation. What gap? I don't know. They all go to the mall and shop for jeans together. I don't think that's it. Of course, the cops that they were beating were the ones who were standing in the gap, but that's what they decided to name themselves because it sounds good, I guess. Anyway, this foundation supports January 6th defendants, and Sarah Maccabee, the head of this organization, said she would try to reschedule it for after the November election, perhaps in February, according to text messages obtained by the New York Times. Like January 6th might be a good time for it, but they don't consider the election to be over at that point, so maybe they'll wait until February. I want you to know that we fought until the absolute last minute to have the event, the text messages said, but there were multiple issues outside of our control, the main one being, this is great, safety concerns of attendees and staff. Now, I have my doubts about that one, safety concerns of attendees and staff, although you could argue, well, this is a gathering of violent felons. This really shouldn't happen anywhere, and I do have concerns about the safety. Now, I guess before I even get to the rest of this crap about these idiots and the stupid event, I will offer you my guess. My guess is that the Secret Service, fresh off of having Trump shot right in front of their faces, is probably not wild about the idea of allowing a gathering of convicted violent felons in one of his houses. Now, certainly not in close proximity to him. It's said in here that he was not planning to attend the event, and that's fine and dandy, although, he's weird and unpredictable and he might be doing that and then make a quote-unquote surprise visit to the event, which should alarm the Secret Service. But even so, even without his attendance, I don't know whether any members of his family who are also still protectees are going to be in Bedminster, but that's allegedly one of his houses, and they protect that property. And again, they were probably like, this is just a hard no. Ordinarily, when you go to a place where the president could be or into a secure area that the Secret Service is responsible for protecting, I don't know whether they've just become that much more lax because he lives in Pervalago, a sex club with a a pool, and or Bedminster, which is supposed to be a golf club / cemetery / goat farm. Anyway, the point is they're supposed to be protecting those properties, and even though you can pay the admission fee and be able to walk in, ordinarily when you're going to an event, a discrete event, and you're going to be either in the president or near the president or in his house, I guess. I don't know whether they really have the same protocol for in his house, but I'm just thinking they might, especially now. They want to have a background check and find out who you are. And I mean, one of the things they look for is this person, so let's say in the last couple of years, been convicted of a violent felony or anti-government activity or radicalism. Yes, all of them. It's an event for them. There will be hundreds of them. Should we allow them in the building? No, probably not. They probably just gave him a hard no on that. And I'm sure, to the extent that he even knows that the event is going on at all, I suppose somebody, either he or someone in his name, could have tried to push back on the Secret Service and said, no, we demand, it's okay with us. We know they're not here to harm him, like he said on January 6th, for instance, which may even have been true on January 6th. However, again, the pushback here from the Secret Service might just be, sir, with tears streaming down their eyes, you were just shot, like 5 minutes ago, someone shot you. And by the way, that person looks like they may very well have been, a right-wing lunatic, but maybe a little bit of both. Apparently, the evidence is that this person was searching for campaign events of any kind from either party that might be convenient, and that might suggest that he was interested in shooting anybody who came by. But whatever. You were just shot and at a rally for you. So, anybody could show up at this thing. I don't know. We don't know how do we secure the premises if everybody's a convicted felon who's showing up? And I don't know. So they may have put back, and it might have been something that he probably was used to being able to tell them for various other events when he was president. I don't care what you think, let them in, or shut down get rid of those metal detectors and let people in with weapons to the January 6th speech on the ellipse. I don't care. They're not here to hurt me, whatever. And he probably thought he could pull the same thing now, but he's not president now. So, without direct presidential orders, I would imagine that the Secret Service might actually prevail on something like that, particularly, if this does not impact the candidate Donald Trump's schedule in any way. It's just simply we're responsible for securing these grounds, and there's no reason, and it's possible that if he were in attendance, they might even bend the rules at his request. I don't know, but if he's not going to be there, maybe it's even harder to get them to bend the rules. So just wondering, and, also like a room full of anti-government wackos who are convicts, violent offenders, and some of whom actually realize I could have escaped this whole thing with a pardon if he had got off his ass and given me one, but he decided not to. But he gave ones out to all of his friends and maybe tried to give one to himself. Who knows? But he's been doing nothing for me, but now I'm in his house. What am I going to do about it? I don't know. Could that happen? It seems unlikely, but some loony just shot him. So I thought that might come up in the discussion. Now, the background of this information, the background of this situation, Ms. Maccabee, she is the wife of Ronald Colton Maccabee, a former deputy sheriff from Tennessee, who is serving 5 years in prison after being convicted of attacking police officers, because you know how he is about back the blue, at the Capitol on January 6th. Former deputy sheriff from Tennessee, 5 years in prison for fighting the cops. The event's location, Trump's golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey, nearby Ivana's grave, highlighted the former president's attempt to normalize the events of January 6th, including by often praising those who took part in the Capitol attack. Gala attendees, ready for the grift, were asked to shell out. Now, this is awards for you. Thank God you rioted on January 6th. Standing up for America. We're going to give you an award. Okay, great. Here I come. All right, not so fast. $2,500 for a single ticket, please. What? Now, mind you, this is an awards dinner supposed to raise money for you. Well, you got to spend money to make money, right? $2,500 for a ticket. That's how we'll raise the money. Maybe you'll get a piece of that, maybe not. Or, of course, we could raise that money from other people attending in your honor. But you, as an attendee, $2,500 or $50,000 for a platinum table for 12. For the chance to mingle with the families of indicted rioters and to win a custom plaque commemorating Justice for All. Do you know what Justice for All is? It's a plaque commemorating it. By the way, just doing the calculations here, I just wanted you to know, in case you hesitated there for a second, yes, $2,500 for a single ticket, but if you want to buy 12 tickets for a platinum table, 12 tickets, $50,000. Now, you might have said, well, wait a second, what's $2,500 times 12? Yeah, you were right. The answer is $30,000. But if you buy a table for 12, they will put, a big round slab of wood in between your 12 people for an additional $20,000. Why is it $50,000 for a table? Shouldn't it be less? Ordinarily yes, but this is grift world, so the answer is no. All right, so you get the chance to mingle with the families of indicted rioters, which is not a great idea, and you get a chance to win the plaque. The plaque commemorates Justice for All. Justice for All is the title of a song featuring a choir of some of the most violent riot defendants who are now locked up in Washington, D.C.'s local jail, along with Mr. Trump, who is not locked up in D.C.'s jail. It's poorly constructed, reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. This is a little bit confusing. I had to read this a couple of times. Several of the defendants are locked up together in Washington, D.C.'s local jail. They sang this song, Justice for All. I don't really know what it is. I think it has, whatever. It's some pseudo-patriotic song. And then someone recorded Trump reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, the sort of thing that you say when you're like, I'm not going to attack the government. I support the governments of the United States through democratic means. But whatever. They threw that in there because it was a patriotic-sounding thing that he could do and could remember the words to, sort of. He probably had a teleprompter, might have had to do it several times. I'd love to get the raw tape of that. Anyway, they, I guess, mixed that in with the song. So Justice for All is a song that featured a choir of some of the most violent defendants who are locked up together in Washington, D.C.'s jail, mixed with the tape of Trump reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, Trump should be locked up in the jail with them, but he's not. Now, the featured guests, and so what were you getting, right? You got a chance to win a plaque commemorating the song. What does that even mean? You don't get a copy of the song. In the old days when you could give you a CD of the song or something like that, now nobody wants that. All right, you can download a file, not very exciting. Well, we'll give you a commemorative plaque that says, there's a song, and we commemorate it, and here's a flag, a picture of a flag maybe, on a piece of metal tacked to a piece of wood. It's a plaque. I've never really heard of a plaque commemorating a song before. Usually people just go, remember that song? Yeah. All right. That's it. What do you want? A plaque? I'm just asking you if you remember this. Have you ever heard the song or you remember it? All right. So where's all the money really going to go? My guess, featured guests who were expected to attend included top former Trump aides like Rudolph W. Giuliani, now bankrupt and having to pay millions of dollars to the Georgia election worker plaintiffs to whom he lost the defamation suit. He's bankrupt and in great need of money. He is also under indictment in both Phoenix and Atlanta on charges of trying to help Mr. Trump overturn the 2020 election. And, of course, Peter Navarro, one-time White House trade advisor who recently completed a 4-month stint in prison for ignoring a subpoena from the House committee that investigated January 6th. I imagine their appearance fees are probably worth a good chunk of the money being raised. All right, a couple of pens dropping on the ground there. Hey, edit that out. Okay, thanks. And then edit out me. All right, never mind. Even though the future of the event is now in doubt, it is in keeping with Trump's persistent efforts to rewrite history regarding January 6th. He's often appeared with January 6th defendants at private events at some of his properties and has repeatedly described them as hostages and political prisoners. Mr. Trump also promised several times to pardon those charged in connection with the Capitol attack, including those who assaulted police officers. The subject has helped him to strengthen the bonds he shares with his supporters by painting them the way he likes to paint himself. Well, not really. Orange is how he likes to paint himself. But as victims of a federal law enforcement system run amok, despite the fact that he headed that law enforcement system for enough time to have pardoned them if he wanted to. But his decision not to distance himself from the events of January 6th is likely to be a riskier proposition in the general election than in the primaries if he aims to attract independent voters who might be put off by attempts to lionize rioters who violently disrupted the normal transfer of presidential power. Maybe not, though. Mr. Trump himself is, of course, facing multiple conspiracy charges in connections with the event of January 6th, re-indicted on new charges last week by federal prosecutors who sought to reframe their allegations to comport with the Supreme Court's recent ruling granting former presidents a broad form of immunity for official acts taken in office. This is not one of them, of course. But what the hell? And in fact, the same day that the fundraiser in Bedminster had been set to take place, a hearing will be held in federal district court in Washington to determine how to assess the effect of the Supreme Court's decision and what effect it will have on Mr. Trump's case. All right, well, it's getting close. I think this thing was supposed to take place on Thursday, which I guess is September 5th, coming up this week. And starting tomorrow marks 2 weeks until his sentencing in the New York case, unless that gets thrown out the window, too.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Net Roots Radio. So let's see. That's the end of that story, thankfully. We're finally through that one. I know we should be doing News Roundup, because it's the return from the weekend. But A, that's Greg's department, and B, you know how we like to do things. A little in-depth dive into the weird part of the news. Anyway, there's lots of more weird stuff to get through. I will read you this. This is sort of a news roundup. It was, of course, just Labor Day weekend. I thought this was an interesting observation made by the UK Independent on this. Of course, over in the UK, not part of the United States, and yet watching the American election with intent, let's say, and trying to find out, well, okay, just how crazy are these Americans, and what are the chances that the whole thing falls apart with, I don't know, either the election somehow of Donald Trump, or worse still, the election of Kamala Harris, but the attempted overthrow of Kamala Harris's transfer into power by MAGA forces. Anyway, it seems less and less likely that the Trump forces will win the election outright. Not that you should get complacent about it, but just in terms of doing the things that they need to do to give themselves a fighting chance to actually hold on and win now that momentum has shifted. They're just not doing it, which could either mean the thing most people think, which is Donald Trump is a tired old man, weak, small and a loser, right? As we were admonished to put it last week. And losing momentum, just sort of never really, was an innovative campaigner. Though I guess at some point you could have said an energetic campaigner, though really it was him being flown around and then driven by golf cart to the edge of the stage and pushed out. And then he would dance, sway back and forth and punch the air when they played YMCA. But he's putting a time in on the speeches, right? Too much. But all he has to do is stand there and read the thing. So, okay. Wasn't the most energetic guy, but as it turns out, I like this headline, The Independent writes here. Harris and Walz blitz the blue wall while Trump phones it in on Labor Day. Trump so far has a relaxed schedule, while Harris is leaving nothing to chance in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. Those are good places to leave nothing to chance. Eric Garcia is the reporter for The Independent on this one. Do we get treated to the full article here? Or no, we might have to read the pocket version of it here. Let's go and see what we can get to. I think you get one read on it and then it ducks behind the paywall, which is better than it used to be. We used to just hide it from the outset, I think, with The Independent. But I get to read through it when I see it and I say, oh, this is a good article. Put it away. Want to share it with you. No, it's harder to do than I thought. But I believe it goes like this. Welcome to the end game of the presidential campaign. While the last 2 months feel like a decade has passed, the change in the nominee, etc. It really has. I guess, in case you forgot, the shooting. I reminded of you of it in the first segment, but it's been a couple of minutes since I did that. While the last 2 months feel like a decade has passed, historically, Labor Day, Greg tells us this all the time, and the days afterward are, historically, again, says it twice, when voters begin to pay attention and, more importantly, begin to decide how they will vote. And, more importantly than that, put away all of their white pants. Right? Or, I guess, white pants and white everything, I suppose. Goes away. I spent all weekend folding all my white pants and vacuum sealing them to put... I've been using those vacuum space saver bags, not for myself, but for transporting college boy too, within the confines of the car with all the clothes that go along with it. They're excellent. You should try them out. Anyway, last week, Vice President Kamala Harris made a swing through rural Georgia. We heard about that, right? The bus trip, as well as her first sit-down television interview with CNN, for which they panned her. She did a fine job with it, but they asked her dumb questions and why something. Tell us more about what you think about Trump. Or don't you think it's weird that he said you were just turned black? Can we talk about that? No, we can't. It's dumb. I've always been black. Anyway, that came after polling showed her strength in the Sun Belt states like Arizona and Nevada, as well as the southeastern swing states, including Georgia and North Carolina. I'm sure Greg will want to talk about that polling some more. Conversely, former President Donald Trump and former Donald Trump impersonator Donald Trump hit the Midwestern states of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, where in 2016 he shocked the world by flipping and winning the presidency. But unlike the days of 2016, when Trump would hold multiple events within one day, Trump did only one event in Michigan and Wisconsin. I don't know whether that's one between them or one each, before he did an event in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and made a stop at the Moms for Liberty conference for a sit-down chat. Those events largely got lost amid his continuing war of words about his photo op with the Gold Star families of U.S. service members who died at Abbey Gate in Afghanistan over the weekend. That would be, of course, the Arlington National Cemetery situation. Over the weekend, he posted videos of the family members defending him appearing at Arlington National Cemetery after he faced criticism for shooting, no pun intended, shooting a campaign video at the cemetery where many American service members are buried, which they should point out is apparently a federal offense. And we ask once again, as Greg put to us last week, why is he not being called back to New York as being in violation of his probation pending sentencing? But maybe they figure they're going to have him before them soon enough. Similarly, Trump's scattershot positions on abortion and in vitro fertilization have also led him to receive criticism from his own base. The IVF thing, really kind of interesting, the way that's developing. And have you heard that one yet? I mean, this is really weird. There's two things going on. One, of course, the IVF thing, where Republicans were attacking IVF, and because of the pro-life evangelicals that they need to support them, have always actually kind of, sometimes vocally, sometimes quietly, opposed IVF because, of course, it creates additional embryos that are, some of which are implanted and then successfully carried to term for couples undergoing fertility treatment. The others are frozen in case they are needed later if they aren't able to carry these embryos to term as backup. But then when the couples undergoing treatment have what I guess they deem to be a sufficient number of children, and they're not natalists and they don't want to have 18 of them, and neither do the natalists, as it turns out. But anyway, what happens to the embryos? It's a question that bothers evangelical pro-life people because those embryos are very often destroyed, sometimes used for medical purposes for their stem cells, etc. But that bothers anti-abortion ideologues. And so they said, let's get rid of it. Let's block that from happening. Let's not allow all of these additional embryos to be created. And that really means shutting down IVF. But IVF, very popular among some right-wing wackadoodles who are natalists and say they want to have 1,800 children, but really don't, or just regular normal people who might be fairly conservative in their political beliefs and might actually support Republicans and who want to have families. And then, of course, there are the people who would generally oppose the Republican candidate no matter what, but who also are normies who take advantage of the availability of IVF. Okay, fine. So there was a big backlash along with the Dobbs decision and other abortion-related fallout, and he was losing ground among normies / soft-leaning Republicans who were willing to swallow a Trump candidacy so long as he didn't get in their way with anything, and then telling them they can't do IVF was getting in their way. So, of course, Trump went out and said, we're actually going to be the best at IVF. We're going to do so much IVF, the government is going to pay. We're going to make the government pay for your IVF. Now, no chance at that, by the way. And I will bet you your Trump prescription card, your $200 debit card for all Medicare recipients that everybody was promised by executive order, they were going to bypass Congress and just send you those $200 on debit cards, probably with his face on it, certainly with his name on it, and all seniors in America, the very heavily voting senior population, we're all going to remember this and head to the polls and vote Trump. Except, of course, those cards were never made, never sent, never funded, never nothing. It was a fantasy. He just wanted to say that and free Regeneron for all you seniors within weeks of ballots being cast. One of the most cynical and disgusting ploys he's ever pulled, but what can I tell you? Everyone, it's memory hold now. So no, there won't be any government-funded IVF from the Trump administration. But anyway, that's what he's been up to lately. But then, as part of the sit-down with CNN, apparently, I didn't see this clip yet myself, but the description is that Dana Bash for CNN basically set up questioning for Tim Walz, who has said, well, my family has benefited from fertility treatments. We had difficulty conceiving the children we were hoping for. We underwent some treatment, including IVF, and did, in fact, successfully raise a family. Wonderful, right? Well, hold on just a minute. We've found some discrepancies. Yes, I probably should have waited on the dramatic music, but Dana Bash found out that, well, isn't it in fact the case, Governor, that your family benefited from intrauterine treatment, not in vitro fertilization, but IUI, which I guess is, I don't know, it used to be the Indiana University, but ooey pooey, right? It's anyway, never mind all of that. In vitro fertilization and in utero I don't know. Is it insemination? I don't know. I think we tried to get to this over the weekend and get what it meant, and then I forgot all about it. But it's artificial insemination, intrauterine insemination, IUI, a fertility treatment where sperm is placed directly into a person's uterus. Good morning, everybody. Having breakfast today. And in vitro fertilization, test tube, the old test tube baby parlance. Well, Dana Bash caught him out. Isn't it the case, Governor, that your family actually benefited from that other kind of fertilization treatment, IUI, and not, as you have stated on multiple occasions in the past, IVF? It was well timed. I was hoping I would get the button hit at the right time on that one. I think that was it. Yes, it is in fact true, but like most normies, everybody just says, well, rather than say, well, IUI, or be sitting at the breakfast table with people saying intrauterine insemination versus in vitro fertilization, which sounds somehow more sterile and maybe like you can say it over breakfast conversation, polite brunch conversation. But IUI, I mean, at this point, isn't it the fact that you said you had a cold and you needed a Kleenex, and you thanked me for giving you a Kleenex when in fact I had given you a Puffs. Aha! Haven't we caught you out in a lie? Dana Bash actually treated it that way and said, at least the reporting was, the description of the clip, and although I found it hard to believe that she would actually use this phrasing. Did she? Those of you who saw the interview can tell me, how can we trust you on anything if you can't get that right? I don't know. Well, at any rate, the Trump campaign has decided to fan the flames of this supposed division. I did see somebody making a good encapsulation of it. Was it? Yeah. Sean T. Collins, in case you want to find him on Blue Sky, who had said, look, the decision, first of all, he's commenting on his own first comment. His first comment is, I want to impress upon you, as a person who was involved in fertility treatments, that every person who questions any of this sounds like a psychotic a-hole. And this was very interesting. He's responding here to Kevin Cruz, everyone knows Kevin Cruz, who was describing the clip. I guess this is where I saw it. He's saying, still trying to wrap my head around Dana Bash in the big CNN interview, making sure loser couples who had an embryo fertilized inside the woman's uterus don't steal the precious valor of heroic couples who had an embryo fertilized outside the woman's uterus and then surgically implanted. Like, what? And Sean Collins says, I want to impress on you, as a person who was involved in fertility treatments, that every person who questions any of this sounds like a psychotic a-hole. Then goes on to say, this is interesting, I wouldn't piss on Bash or Vance if they were on fire over this. I don't know why they would be on fire over this, but I did want to assure Sean, and I did over the weekend, that Sean, I can see this is upsetting you. I don't think you should be called on to piss on Bash or Vance, whether they're on fire or not. I'm pretty sure we can find other volunteers who will gladly step into the breach and piss on them for you if you're too annoyed to actually do it. And then, as he points out later on, the decision by the Trump campaign and its abettors in the media to create a divide between IVF and IUI families, where not only had no such divide existed, but the idea hadn't even occurred to anyone. This is one of the most loathsome things either outfit has ever done this campaign, and that is saying something. And he keeps doing things that I can't believe are so loathsome, but there they are. Yeah, that's really true. There's no divide. They've never fought between IVF and IUI families or thought of one as more worthy than the other. But the Trump campaign has actually got them doing this, which is really astonishing, to say the least. Is this where we were on all this? Where were we on all this? Oh, yes, right. We were still reading the reports of how the campaign went over the Labor Day weekend. That's how we got to this thing. Right. So we were saying that over the weekend, Trump posted videos of family members defending his Arlington National Cemetery thing and yada, yada, yada. Then, of course, similarly, Trump's scattershot positions on abortion and in vitro fertilization, that was it, have also led to him to receive criticism from his own base. But The Labor Day holiday allows for a bit of a reset, and so far it looks like the Harris campaign is the one leaving nothing to chance. On Monday, that was yesterday, Harris was set to campaign in Michigan, a state that essentially set the parameters for the labor movement, before she heads to Pittsburgh with President Joe Biden. Biden famously earned plaudits from organized labor when he marched in a picket line last year during the United Auto Workers strike. Meanwhile, Harris's running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, departed from his home state and was set to campaign at Milwaukee's Labor Fest in Wisconsin. Why? Labor Day, right? Democrats have long been afraid of losing Wisconsin ever since Hillary Clinton failed to campaign there. Remember, they grilled her over that. And Mandela Barnes lost his Senate race to incumbent Ron Johnson in 2022. Walz will later engage on his first solo tour of Pennsylvania. Incidentally, one mark against picking Walz over Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro was that Shapiro would help lock up Pennsylvania, another blue wall state that Trump flipped and where he has considerable appeal. Although nothing indicates that Walz is having any trouble connecting with anybody anywhere, but they did remind us of that, and I think that, particularly for an overseas audience, if you're reading The Independent in the UK, you should be aware of that. Conversely, Trump, nor his running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, in case you forgot or thought it was RFK Jr., we're set to have any public events. I guess not set to have any public events on Labor Day, despite the fact that both have tried to refashion the Republican Party as the pro-worker party. Indeed, when Vance spoke at the International Firefighters Conference, he was booed the day after Walz spoke to them and received a warm welcome. Look out for that. The Harris campaign wasted no time slamming Trump and Vance in a statement. Donald Trump is ditching workers on Labor Day because he is an anti-worker, anti-union extremist who will sell out working families for his billionaire donors if he takes power. Campaign spokesman Joseph Costello said in a statement, and it's wise to frame it as taking power. Forget winning the election. He doesn't have to do that to take power. Vice President Harris is the only candidate for president who stands firmly on the side of labor and working Americans, and she is fighting to build up the middle class by cutting taxes, lowering costs, and creating opportunity. Standard stump speech stuff. Indeed, the one event Trump has on the calendar is a video call. Lazy. Oh, and also we could say... boring. Yeah, probably. A video call with current and retired members of the auto workers, United Auto Workers, UPI, reported. Trump has repeatedly clashed with Sean Fain, the head of the UAW, who notably wore a shirt saying Trump is a scab at the Democratic National Convention. And later, during a labor council meeting at the convention, attendees welcomed Fain by chanting, "Trump's a scab." This does not mean that Trump will be silent this week. He will hold a rally where? In Wisconsin. Where? Mosinee? I don't know. Mosinee. You tell me, Wisconsinites, how that is pronounced. That happens on Saturday. Is that this past or coming up? I don't know. That's golf day. I'm surprised he's given up the golf. But Trump's staggered schedule shows that he is not able to do the barnstorm schedules that he did in 2016, because he's old, or even 2020, while Harris is doing the Blue Wall Blitz. So keep that in mind. That's an important part of the calculation of how things are going and what you might expect to happen. Over the weekend, I guess I'll bring this one up too. One of the more outrageous things, Trump says something more outrageous every day at one of his rallies, and you've heard him say things like, both in rally situations and in debate situations. So Democrats, they allow abortion after the baby is born, which really one of the most egregious things ever lied about. But for some reason, I don't know, maybe he didn't do it I feel like he did it in a debate context at some point. And I mean, at that point, the moderator should just be like, this guy doesn't even, forget it. We're turning off the microphone. Debate's over. The other person wins. But anyway, they don't do that. So the latest ludicrous claim is this one. He riffs the way we do on the show. But I think we keep things a little bit more reality-based. Plus, we do provide links at the end. But Lawyers, Guns, and Money blog has got a roundup of the latest wackadoodle statement. Trump claims public schools are performing transgender surgery on children without parental knowledge. Okay. He's actually telling people, on the campaign trail, your kid goes to school, and then a couple days later he comes back and he's the opposite gender. That they're actually doing sex change operations without consent at school. Like you can't even in some places get lunch for free if you're a student in need. But they're doing sex change operations. Sure, no problem. Anyway, Paul Campos covers this for Lawyers, Guns, and Money. This was all over the mainstream media and all, but I thought I'd take a blogger's perspective on this one because why not? It's that much more entertaining. And I guess Jamel Bowie has put together a TikTok video on the subject that is embedded here in the blog, pointing out that 1, Trump is making totally deranged claims. 2, Trump is also now incapable of speaking cogently in any sense on any topic for any length of time. This is all just subtext of this nonsense he's actually saying. Trump has deteriorated in regard to both of these behaviors quite markedly since 2020. And not just it's a crazy claim, but he's just less and less capable of expressing it. And it comes out. I think even the claims he thinks he wants to make and thinks he can back up come out more fantastical and stupider and harder to support because he takes mental shortcuts through the story. Anyway, well, so do I. We have a lot in common, but I haven't deteriorated as much as him. And I don't have the same motivation to lie. Anyway, let's see. There's number 4, which is that a major party presidential candidate's very advanced age might be causally related to the candidate's recent physical and mental deterioration. And that was, until 5 weeks ago, by far the biggest issue of the 2024 campaign. This issue has now almost completely disappeared from elite media discourse. I don't know why. Except, I would add, parenthetically, it says here, when Bowie is pointing out that it has disappeared. All of this makes no sense unless you assume some combination of, 1, ordinary rules of journalism don't apply to Trump, and because 2, the people who own and manage outlets like Bowie's own employer either actively want Trump to win or are relatively indifferent to that possibility, given that Trump's continued political relevance is profitable for them personally. So that really wraps it up. I mean, in addition to the fact that he said this stupid thing, and I don't think it even quotes him in this one, but yeah, basically it was just that. Your kids go to school, and then all of a sudden, and I think I probably retweeted the comment at some point over the weekend because it was so insane, but there you have it. Have I passed it in my scrolling by or not? Anyway, it's just insane. One of the most just ludicrous things he's ever uttered. And I know it's difficult to keep track of which ones are the most insane, but that's definitely up at the top of the list somewhere. The idea that, oh yeah, sure, kids are getting sex change operations unknown to their parents at school. They're going to school as boys and coming home as girls and vice versa. Yep. Okay. All right. So let's see. I thought that was of interest. Top of the hour break coming up shortly. We'll see what else we can squeeze in and see where we go from there. I'm going to save this one for the next segment because I want to grouse extensively on this one. But let's see. Why not? Well, since we were talking IVF, we can start with this and perhaps continue it on the other side. But I thought an interesting take on the IVF thing from, if it'll load up here, Alt-Right Delete newsletter. Yes, no, not going to load on me. I don't know why. From Melissa Ryan. Everyone knows Melissa. Oh, I hope we all know Melissa Ryan. Everyone, I think, probably listening to the show probably was following her or seeing lots of her comments back in the old Twitter days before it turned into a Nazi bar. And if you're not following her over on Blue Sky, you ought to be. Trump has a big IVF problem. Just thought I would read through a little bit of this before the break to see if I got the total perspective on it. Donald Trump is desperate. How desperate? Desperate enough to blow up his own coalition and ignite a civil war among his own base. Grab some popcorn. It's going to be a fun one. As you know, IVF has always been a problem for Trump's campaign and the Republican Party. We explained why a little earlier. An overwhelming majority of Americans support it, but the evangelical base that underpins MAGA is staunchly opposed. Trump and Republicans falsely claim to be in favor of IVF until it matters, of course. Just a reminder of the legislative history here. When a bill supporting IVF came up for a vote in the Senate recently, Republicans, including J.D. Vance, blocked it. Politically, it's an impossible needle to thread, but it hasn't stopped Republicans from trying to hoodwink the public about what they actually support. On last Thursday, out of nowhere, Trump decided to up the stakes. He announced a new policy for his campaign. If elected, he claims he'll force insurance companies to pay for IVF treatments or that the government will pay for it. Trump framed it in a way intended to appeal to followers of the false great replacement conspiracy theory, saying we want to produce babies in this country, right? So doing a little of the natalist dance. At least he's got a better claim to it, as he's got, 5 kids? These 3-kid natalists are getting on my nerves. Yeah. Oh, also, by the way, I've been thinking about the weird overlap between natalists and raw milk activists who, as Talia Levin has pointed out here, apparently the infant mortality rate was cut in half when they introduced pasteurization for milk, but somehow the natalists want all their raw milk back. I don't know how that's going to work. Anyway, Melissa was saying there's no earthly way Trump could make the government pay for IVF, and I am way late on the music here, so awkward exit at this point. No earthly way that they could make the government pay for it, even if he wanted to. No Republican would vote for it. Trump knows this, but he also knows how underwater he is with women, particularly suburban women. Abortion is a big loser for him, and looking for a way to find his way back to the surface. We'll be right back after this. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Once again, we'll be fixing the music, I hope, in post, as they say, over in Hollywood. I think it's actually a relatively easy thing to do now that I have an awesome editor, but so you may not notice. And so all of this talk is useless to those of you listening on podcast. I hope you just think I'm crazy or nitpicky about how perfect the music really is. Okay. So I was reading through Melissa Ryan's writing about the IVF problems that Trump has, and we're hitting on all the same highlights, but with much more organized thought. And thankfully, we have others to lean on for organized thought. So as I was saying, on Thursday, out of nowhere, Trump decided he was going to, as he frequently does when it comes to policy, either announces it on Twitter or now I guess on Truth Social, or just blurts it out somewhere, and nobody has done any homework or background work to prepare for such a policy, and it is in fact impossible to execute such a policy, which is in part why nobody has done any groundwork on it, but also he doesn't share his thoughts with anybody ahead of time so that they can be ready. It is a very telling thing about Trump that he thinks this is the way the presidency operates. Of course, one, he thinks he occupies the presidency now, and he doesn't. But even when he did occupy the presidency, for whatever reason, we decided to allow him to do this. He thought, well, when I turn on the TV and I see presidents announce a policy change, sometimes it's slow in happening, but the policy change does happen. And that is usually because the presidents don't announce it until the wheels are turning on the policy, or they've announced something that's been approved by Congress, or they've announced an initiative that they're sending to Congress. They have where the specifics are written, and normal presidents don't announce these things until it's all set. It's all at least written down as a proposal that, or well underway towards being written down as a proposal that they can share with Congress. But Trump experiences reality through television or whatever medium he's watching, and doesn't understand that behind the scenes things happen in order to get to this point. What he sees is a president has made an announcement or proclamation of some kind that some sort of policy will either be implemented or proposed, and thereafter such a policy is proposed or implemented, and so that's the way it works. The president just makes up his mind and says it. Because the presidents don't give speeches that say, my administration has been working for the past 6 months to put a written proposal together to propose to Congress for their consideration, or we've got it all the way through, or we've worked with federal agencies and we've formulated this policy and we're going to implement it starting now because we don't need congressional approval for it, whatever. But they don't discuss, they don't waste time in the speech with the background of all of this work has been done, all this preparatory groundwork has been laid. So Trump just thinks, if I announce it, well, also everyone works for me as president, as opposed to other people who like to think of it as I work for everybody, but everyone works for me, and if I announce a policy, they will do what they have to do, bust their ass to make it happen, and then it will happen. But that's not really the way it is. But he decided, all right, well, we're losing on the IVF thing, so I'll just announce the policy that we're going to have the government pay for it or force the insurance companies to pay for it. And everybody says, I've never heard of this before. I guess we have to start trying to put this together as a policy. And, ordinarily, well, this would take a couple of months to hammer this out, if it could ever be hammered out. And by then, you'll know that Trump isn't the president, and it will have been a giant waste of time for those people. I don't care about burning their time. But anyway, there is, as she says, no earthly way Trump could make the government pay for IVF even if he wanted to. No Republican would vote for it. Trump knows it, but he also knows he's underwater with women, particularly suburban women. Abortion is a losing issue of titanic proportions for the Republican Party. See the midterms of 2022. But evangelical voters still have the stronghold, a stronghold on the party. This is where it gets fun and, of course, weird, because everything is weird. Many of Trump's Silicon Valley backers, the same ones who foisted J.D. Vance on his campaign, identify as, we said before, natalists. Yes, they have a bizarre obsession with raising the birth rate and spreading their DNA, and IVF is a tool at their disposal. Elon Musk, himself a natalist and father of at least 12 children, which we sometimes forget about, but at least he's doing his part as a natalist. These natalists who get written up in the papers. Anyway, this natalist, Elon Musk, tweeted, "This is cool," about the policy. One of those people who wants conservative government and yada yada and cut spending. Free IVF even for billionaires. Sounds cool. He likes this one. Great. Now, it's worth noting that many Silicon Valley natalists, as well as Silicon Valley investors generally, have invested heavily in reproductive technologies. And Melissa says, I'll take it a step further. Trump announced this policy the same week that J.D. Vance publicly asked his Silicon Valley mentor, Peter Thiel, to get off the sidelines and support Trump's flailing campaign with some cold, hard cash. Trump also announced the policy at an event moderated by former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, who remains extremely popular with the Silicon Valley crowd. Watching the various factions of the MAGA movement digest the news and freak out is highly entertaining. The evangelicals they may also not be winning, but they aren't willing to let this slide to gain a Trump win. Trump's comments about the Florida abortion ban this week, trying to be too cute by half, didn't help matters. They're mad as hell, and they're okay with that anger being made public. What are we talking about? For instance, Eric Erickson tweeting here in an embedded tweet. While the Twitter conversations focus on Harris, my texts and DMs are filled with angry conservatives about Trump's comment on the Florida amendment and IVF. He did, in fact, eventually come out and say, love the IVF. It's terrific. We're totally going to have it, even though that's against the anti-abortion stance, but also going to support the anti-abortion stance on the abortion question on the ballot in Florida. The pro-Trump forums and chats have been equally entertaining. It's a multi-thronged? Oh, okay. Well, there may be many throngs of people involved in it, but it's multi-pronged, really. All right. Debate between folks who are supportive of IVF, including many who accessed IVF to have their own children, but don't want the government to pay for treatments. Then there's evangelicals who seem to think IVF treatments produce far more discarded embryos than they do. I mean, they're opposed to, I guess, any of them, but they have their ideas about what the number is, and I guess it's wrong. Folks who like the proposal, but only for straight white nuclear families, and folks who believe some truly weird misinformation about infertility and the resulting children from IVF treatments, including the false belief that the COVID vaccine causes infertility. It does not. Don't ding me for that, YouTube. Other idiots say that. There is zero consensus in MAGA land on this issue, and Trump's surprise proposal has created some interesting rifts. This is why you have presidential aides vet stuff before you let the president announce it. But he bypasses it and blurts things out. But luckily, he's also not the president. And anyway, let's see. As a parent of 2 IVF babies myself, this is Melissa telling us this, not me. I can't claim allegiance with either team on this one, if there are, in fact, 2 teams. Or 5, for all I know. I couldn't help but wonder, Melissa says, how Trump supporters who had used IVF to conceive felt when they learned how some of the crazy stuff their MAGA buddies believed about them and their children. Well, there are weirdos out there. What can I tell you? Trump's IVF proposal is one of his biggest cell phones. It won't persuade any pro-choice voters, and it brings choice and reproductive freedom back to the forefront of the news cycle, something his campaign surely does not want. It gives Democrats in the Senate multiple opportunities to put IVF bills, including an existing bill that would force insurance companies to cover fertility treatments. Imagine that. Put that up for a vote and have Republicans vote them down. Potentially, it will suppress Trump's evangelical base who won't vote for Harris but might feel discouraged enough to stay home on Election Day. We've got, when she wrote it, 65 days until the election. It's less than that now. If Trump wants to make it about reproductive freedom, I'm all for it. Let's do everything possible to drive that wedge right through the heart of the MAGA coalition. I hope Trump continues to give us opportunities to keep abortion, birth control, and IVF in the headlines. Kamala Harris is ready for that conversation, too. How do you like that? That is pretty remarkable. Well put. Just wanted to add that to the mix. Let's see. Other things to get to. In anticipation of Joan's attendance in the last segment, I thought I might lay some groundwork and take care of some other housekeeping. First of all, well, let's turn back to, where can I find it? Jeremy Freiberger's updates from the various states. He sent me one for, well, I think he lost track of how many he had sent, but it was, we were pleased to find out that all of the ones that he thought he sent have in fact made it to me, and I did get the Michigan one on the air, and I actually got it on the air right in the middle of Rosalind McGregor's visit back, bringing us back to Michigan. So well timed, all seems to work out beautifully for Jeremy on these things. You'd think I was planning it, but what can I tell you? It's just working out. So, but there's more. Remember, he's doing a state-by-state down-ballot focus, because we all need to have a down-ballot focus. If you haven't done it yet, there's lots of great programs out there that are aimed at moving your money more directly, more quickly. Now is a critical time when people are wondering whether or not they should be printing those flyers and doing door knocking and dropping literature. Help them make sure that the answer is yes, that they won't find themselves in a mountain of debt at the end of the campaign, hoping for last-minute donations. Much better to be able to plan with money than to hope against hope that you can raise money to pay back debt. But now, New Hampshire is in focus, the Granite State. Alphabetically speaking, the 4th state in this Jeremy Freiberger's 6-state series, looking at closely divided state legislatures, where you can do some real good with your down-ballot donations. It's Senate, New Hampshire. Well, first of all, the entire state serves in it, as you know. The Senate, not so much. Senate has 10 Democrats and 14 Republicans. They really went the opposite direction with the Senate and made it really super small. The House has 50 billion people in it, apparently. Remember, New Hampshire's a small state. 10 Democrats, 14 Republicans. That's not great. Its House has 195 Dems. That does sound good. But 201 Republicans and 1 independent and 1 other, whatever that might be, and 2 vacancies for a grand total of 400 seats. You see that? 24 seats in the Senate, 400 seats in the House. I don't really know how they did that, and they really should be working on rethinking that at some point, I think. But this is where it is. 195 to 201 with some vacancies and an independent of what kind, I don't know, an other of what kind, I have no idea. But I'm sure we could all look it up. The point is, it's very closely divided in the House, and with 400 seats up, anything could happen. And in the Senate, 10 to 14 is not that far apart either. I mean, it's only 24 seats, so every seat is really is a bigger deal. But why not aim to flip one or both there? New Hampshire's elected Republicans currently hold the office of Secretary of State and Governor, you may remember. The governor appoints the state's attorney general. It's not an elected position. Plus, both chambers of the state legislature are dominated, one by Republicans at this point, which, by the way, is called the General Court, Jeremy points out. New Hampshire's state legislature. Very interesting. Yet, the Democratic Party's presidential nominee has won New Hampshire in the 5 most recent elections. So the state goes blue when they're voting presidential. Why not for the rest of it? Thus, expect New Hampshire to be fertile ground for down-ballot Dems in November. Meanwhile, although Greg likes to say that every New Hampshire resident is also a member of the state's legislature, and so do I, one such resident has to be the state's governor. Somebody has to stay out of the legislature, I guess. And as Trump trademark Chris Sununu is termed out, the race to replace him will be fought between New Hampshire's Republican Attorney General, his appointee, I guess, and former New Hampshire U.S. Senator Kelly Ayotte, remember her? And either Manchester Mayor Joyce Craig, a Democrat, or Democrat Cindy Warmington, who is a member of New Hampshire's Executive Council, whatever that is. That's an interesting question, too. So the General Court and then an Executive Council, which is a thing. I don't know what it is either, now that I think about it, although I have heard of it before. My memory is, I don't remember what that damn thing is, just that it exists. New Hampshire's September 10th primary. That's next week. The last primary date of 2024. How interesting. The presidential primary, they insist on going first, even though we don't let them anymore. Everything else, we want to go last. It's like their general court, their state legislature. The Senate is tiny, and everybody in the world is in the House. Well, there's no going halfway, or no compromising, I guess, in New Hampshire. Well, like I said, next Tuesday, along with Delaware and Rhode Island, so it's a tie. Isn't that interesting that the smallest states have said, what the hell, let's wait until the very end. Between all the garbage we heard about the Electoral College, you got to pay attention to small states. No, it's actually the opposite. I don't know why anybody believes that about where you'll campaign given the Electoral College. But also, we want them to pay attention to us, and then we have to be early with our presidential race, et cetera, focus attention here. And all the small states say, let's be last with everything else. That is weird. Anyway, Craig has been leading in the Dem primary polls and is about even with Ayotte in the general election polling. Further down ballot, New Hampshire has 2 congressional districts, the Dem representing the 1st district. Frontline incumbent Chris Pappas may need a bit of help. You can do that through, again, the Frontline program, frontline.dccc.org. The 2nd district, currently held by retiring Dem Ann Custer, will most likely be filled by fellow Democrat Maggie Goodlander, a former Biden DOJ attorney and spouse of the current NSA director Jake Sullivan. How do you like that? Because New Hampshire's primary hasn't happened yet, no Dem for the 2nd district in New Hampshire is currently included on any of the DCCC's lists. Stay tuned. Maybe they should move up their primary just for that reason alone. Finally, to help Dems flip New Hampshire's state house, go to NH, their postal code, New Hampshire, nhhousedems.org. To help Dems flip the Senate, nhsenatedems.org. That at least makes some sense. Next up will be Pennsylvania. We'll get to them probably tomorrow, depending on if the write-up comes through. A swing state rich in electoral college votes, a U.S. Senate election, numerous congressional swing districts, and a divided, closely split state legislature. So looking forward to that one. And, let's see. Okay. Some praise for one, having synced up the Michigan reports, and also appreciation for yesterday's time capsule show, audio time capsule, as he puts it, replaying the September 2nd, 2022 show. This is the first time I think that I've replayed the same show as a rerun more than once. I try to avoid doing that, but I don't know. The date came up, and it just seemed like the right thing to remind everybody of one of the high watermarks of the Biden administration in terms of rhetorical high watermarks, and a reminder of what once was for Joe Biden. Yes, it looks like he's slowed down a bit. I think we can all admit that, but we're pretty happy with the solution for that issue. Okay, so that of some news. And by the way, just got another DLCC, Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee press release noting, we'll just give you the top line on this one. It's in case you missed it. So you didn't miss it. DNC invests in historic $2.5 million in that's the Democratic National Committee moving, and by the way, in case you didn't know this, the DNC is the ones that will chiefly be responsible for conducting the presidential level campaign on behalf of the party. And I know everybody sort of thinks that the DNC controls everything, and you know that there's Democratic policy making, or a Democratic president's policy can be driven by the DNC, and that's not really true. They're basically chiefly aimed at funding presidential campaigns and such efforts, and funding the and holding and organizing the convention. But they raised lots of money in the wake of the big switch, and they're going to divert $2.5 million to the DLCC to support state legislative races. So that seems like good news. Just thought I'd add that to the mix since we were on that topic as it was. All right, it being 10:20, let's get ready for the last segment, and we'll see whether Joan can join us for that. And two things we'll need to do in order to be ready for that. One, I'll have to start looking for what's in the mix for Joan's latest and what she's been writing about. And also, I will remind you, it's September, and it looks like, it's time for Congress to return to session. And I guess we're in the 30-day sprint here to the end of the fiscal year. And, while most Republicans are quite well aware of the fact that it hurts them electorally to flirt with government shutdowns, we still have the Freedom Caucus to deal with, and they think they know better than everybody what's good for the country and what's good for their party, and to hell with the rest of you, they're going to force one on you regardless. So what's going on? One, I have the Hills article from yesterday, 6 things to watch during Congress's September sprint. We'll see whether Joan is in agreement with this listing. Congress returns September 9th for a 3-week sprint during which lawmakers will face key legislative deadlines and work to push their political messages before departing again for campaign season. But not just campaign season coming up, it's the next fiscal year. And yes, that happens all the time, right? They have a big, long August recess, and then they say, of course, well, we need off during Labor Day week as well in order to go awkwardly to visit with workers and pretend that we know anything about them on the Republican side, and or go to Labor Day rallies and speeches on the Democratic side, as we pointed out. I think, as we heard over the weekend, Republicans markedly less enthused about doing anything at all, particularly with respect to labor, on Labor Day. Anyway, political pressure and considerations could now complicate how Congress addresses must-pass items. Oh, I was going to say, so they take that extra week off, knowing that September is it. September 30th is the end of the fiscal year, and everything has to be in place by then. And they say, well, it was about 4 weeks in September. Let's just throw the first one out entirely, and then try and do it all in 3 weeks. So, the legislative dash will also be a prime time for lawmakers to push messages that aid their parties ahead of the November election. 6 items to watch. They're listed here. 1, government funding. That's really the only one, in my view, but okay. Government funding for fiscal 2024 expires on September 30th, because it always does. And virtually no one expects Congress will come to an agreement on funding for 2025 by that deadline. The Senate has passed 0 regular funding bills. And while the House has passed partisan versions of more than half of the 12 regular funding bills, intra-party squabbling has stopped others from passing on the House floor. So the House has passed half of its work. The Senate hasn't accepted any of them. That's 0. Attention is now turning to what the terms will be for a continuing resolution, CR, as you know, to fund the government at current levels to avoid a government shutdown and buy Congress more time. One consideration is the length of a continuing resolution. Hardline conservatives from the Freedom Caucus are pushing for a stopgap to extend into 2025 with the thought that doing so could avoid a massive end-of-the-year omnibus negotiated primarily by party leaders. That could also give Republicans a chance of getting more influence over funding levels if they win the House, Senate, and White House. Other Republicans prefer starting 2025 with a clean slate, arguing that even if former President Trump wins, he will not want to be distracted by a funding fight in his first months back in office. Can't distract him if he doesn't want to be distracted. He just doesn't care. Also at issue is a Freedom Caucus push to pair a CR with the SAVE Act, a bill to expand proof of citizenship requirements for voter registration that passed the House earlier this year, but that the Democratic-controlled Senate and White House oppose. Doing so would be an attempt to try to either force Democratic action on the matter or to use it as a negotiation item for other matters like the length of a stopgap. Speaker Mike Johnson has not yet indicated what kind of structure he prefers for a stopgap package, but he is said to be considering all options. Thanks for letting us know. What else have they got on the plate? Veterans Affairs funding shortfall. In addition to the funding deadline, Congress has until September 20th, 10 days earlier, to address a roughly $3 billion budget shortfall for the Department of Veterans Affairs. But that requires Republicans who care about veterans, so that's out the window as well. Republican concerns about mismanagement of the agency have remained even as some senators hope to expedite legislation to address the shortfall before the August recess. Well, that didn't work. If Congress does not act, veteran compensation and pension benefits and readjustment benefits could be delayed. Thanks, Republicans. Democrats next to dig in on Project 2025 messaging. That's expected in the next month as well, because we're already doing it, because it really sucks. House Democrats will use the weeks in session to start digging in on their messaging against Project 2025, the Heritage Foundation-led effort to suggest policy changes and personnel placements in the new conservative administration, which hasn't formulated and probably won't, which it would expect to be the Trump administration. Well, sorry. Despite Trump's disavowal of the project and his opposition to some of its policy ideas, Project 2025, created by former Trump administration officials and allies, that's why they think he likes it, has become a main source of Democratic attacks against him and Republicans. Democrats have created a task force to oppose Project 2025 and are coordinating with House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries on several Project 2025 forums on Capitol Hill. What else? Republicans center messaging on Harris-Walz. Are they going to be successful with it? Well, that's a different story. House Republicans have already started to shift their attacks and investigatory firepower from Biden to Vice President Harris and her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. I haven't heard them actually come up with an excuse for investigating Harris yet, but the stuff they've come up with on Walz, of course, you've heard it, and it's super weak. The House Oversight and Accountability Committee, for instance, has asked U.S. Customs and Border Protection for documents and communications with Harris, now they're focusing on Harris, about her work on immigration matters. Republican press materials have also upped their usage of the Biden-Harris administration rather than the Biden administration since Harris became the nominee. Republicans aim to put the focus on Harris and Walz with their campaign trail events over the August recess as well. So not really so much of a legislative issue as, well, maybe they'll have some hearings if they think they can organize them quickly enough. We'll be back after this. Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Joan McCarter, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. Would you describe yourself that way? Is it too much?
Maybe a little too much.
Okay, but well-rested from the long weekend and ready to go. I was just telling her we were running through this Hill article for various things that are, I guess, on the, well, they said on the legislative agenda at the outset of this thing, but of course...
there is no legislative agenda.
Right, no. Exactly. And,
well, actually, there might be in the Senate, but let's talk about the more important stuff first.
In the House, of course, not much. But yeah, a surprise reminder of just how behind they are on these things. 0 appropriations bills actually passed. Again, it is 3 weeks or so. You know, by the time they come back till the end of the fiscal year, everybody kind of knows they're just going to fall back on CRs, but they really have let things go. And then the other supposedly legislative things were, well, they're going to start investigations of whatever they can with Harris and Walz. There's also listed here, Biden impeachment wild card. I mean, I guess the enthusiasm for Biden impeachment has got to be diminished at this point, but there are still people who are like, no, I guess there's weirdos in the Freedom Caucus. They're like, now we have even less time to get this done. We have to start right away, or he'll escape.
Or outside the Freedom Caucus, the one who got kicked out.
Oh, yeah, murdery Trader Green got booted. She wants back in, I guess, but I don't know. Anyway, it's the same strain of insanity. They just, I don't know, they decided they didn't like her. I don't know why that happened, but it did. Okay, but so I guess she feels like she has to deliver
Kevin
on this.
McCarthy, that's what
right.
kept. Yeah.
That's it. But even so, I don't know. This whole thing just makes no sense. But yeah, I guess that was it. They wanted to strong arm McCarthy out for their own reasons. She wanted to get, I guess, promoted and look like a power broker, so she was pro McCarthy, even though there was really nothing about McCarthy that she should have been in favor of. But I guess she thought the vote was going to go the other way. You know, like in a football pool, right? Everybody has picked the Cowboys in this thing. I got to pick the whoever's playing them to go the other way, just because I think the Cowboys are going to win this game. But if they don't, I'll be the only one with the points for this game. So, okay. And then listed in here, last thrown in is like, actually legislation, the Farm Bill. Okay, so Farm Bill, just by way of setting the game board here. Authorizations passed in the large agricultural food and nutritional program bill technically expire on the same day everything expires, September 30th. Yes. So, I don't know. They keep repeating the date as though it was like some, it's some bespoke legislative arrangement that we have. No, it's every year.
It's the fiscal year. Yeah.
Yeah. But it does say, consequences do not actually kick in until after December 31st when dairy and commodity programs expire. Okay. Still the September 30th deadline. Likely to spur pushes from interest groups for Congress to address the Farm Bill, typically renewed, of course, every 5 years, in case you were wondering. So there you have it. Farm Bill and Veterans Affairs funding shortfall, serious things. But first they have to fund the entire government and also impeach the president and investigate the new nominee. There you go. That's the priorities.
And pick a fight with the Senate and the White House on the September 30th government funding deadline.
Sure, why not? They always feel like that's leverage, and there are some Republicans who think it's foolish to waste that leverage. It's just that they've never been able to leverage anything out of it without also damaging their electoral prospects. And, what can I do? They don't remember that from year to year, and
they don't care. The ones who want to shut down government don't care.
That's true.
They are safe in their seats.
They also believe that they can just steal the presidency if they want it.
Right. Right.
I guess that's really it. I don't worry about facing the voters because we'll just overthrow them. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that's a different
approach. And they're not going to get rid of me because I live in a crazy district.
Right.
I represent a crazy district.
Yeah. I just... and I mean, it's probably true for most of them. Some crazy things have been happening in these places that were, oh no, this is solid red. Oh, actually, they actually want you to get the F out of their personal business and let them have children or not the way they want to. Oh, wow.
So, solid red there's a few places, that will always be solid red, but it's questionable in a lot of others. So, which makes, okay. What happened at the end of last week over the weekend?
What happened?
Trump apparently is trying to get Marjorie Taylor Greene to, go ahead and say, let's shut down the government.
Well, that should be an easy sell.
Yeah. So Trump and MTG are saying, shut it down, shut it down, shut it down. Their demand is if the SAFE Act is not included, then they shut down.
Okay.
Of course, the Senate and the White House are not going to do that. So, first fight. But right now, Johnson, according to Jake Sherman at Punchbowl, is looking at passing a stopgap funding bill next week that keeps government funded until March 2025, which is what the Freedom Caucus wants.
Yes.
They want it to go into 2025 so that potentially it's Trump getting to set the spending for 2025 rather than Biden.
Yes. And in the Hill article, they credulously report that as, well, we don't want poor President Trump to be distracted by a spending fight in his first months in office. After all,
no,
he's going to be a dictator on day one, so he's not going to be distracted. But we don't want him to feel bad about being a dictator, I guess. And we'll handle the finances later so that you can be a dictator for now, as opposed to, well, you see, if you just kick the can to there and there's no budget, then and you then say, all right, we're going to be responding to President Trump. And of course, they also believe a Republican majority in both the House and the Senate will rewrite the budget. Even though if you're a dictator, who cares what the budget is? But okay.
Right. But the Johnson's going into this saying, okay, I'll go along with them.
Yeah.
Means that it's going to be an ugly month.
Yeah. So, right.
Which we already knew, but you would think at this point Johnson would say, look, as you were talking about above before I came in, there's a lot of money pouring into our states and a lot of money pouring into these races and a lot of work down ballot that's going to hurt us from the Democrats because they have all of this money and all of these volunteers and all of this organization. So you would think Johnson would have an eye on that and think, yeah, maybe picking this fight right now is not such a smart idea.
Yeah.
You would think.
Yeah. He may, I mean, that may even be his intellectual preference, but he realizes, I guess if there's anything,
maybe they have to take the L first thing, get it out of everybody's system, and move on in the other 2 weeks that they have in September. Maybe.
That would be an organized thought for them to have. We gave you your shot. You had your moment. But as it turns out, and it may very well be that the majority of the Republican conference says we actually don't want, at least not a shutdown now. We want to get a CR across the line. Let's try to tie it to the SAFE Act, lose, and then do it without 2 days before the end of the fiscal year, something like that.
Something like that.
Or I guess they could go the shutdown route if they really don't have enough members left who remember. That always seems to work out badly for us, public relations wise.
Or care. It means the Democrats are nominally in control again. Not nominally.
Yeah.
In reality, in control again because he needs their votes to pass government funding, and it's the same old story. But what's curious to me is that Johnson could be looking at this juggernaut of Democratic money and not just money, but organization behind a ground game with a huge group of volunteers that Harris has brought in. And voter registrations, even in red states, going through the roof among women. So, do you really want to pick this fight, Mikey?
I mean, no, probably not. Although I wonder how many Republicans think, well, the reason we would insist on attaching the SAFE Act is because, all of these people's registrations should be challenged. But I mean, this thing won't be effective. It's not like they'll vote for it. I voted for it yesterday. How come it's not happening?
It won't be effective because it's already federal law.
No, there's that too. But any of the things that they thought might be new or piling on, you're not going. It's not going to be something you can intimidate people with right away, anyway. And to the extent that there's anything in it at all, well, you can't. They indulge in this fantasy that they're non-citizens voting left and right, and they are not. They are not, and nobody is telling them they can either. So. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess they have to make a show of it's election. That's enough for a lot of Republicans. It's election time, and you did an election-related bill about voting. So, in my mind, that's you taking care of the problem, even though nothing changed, and even if it had changed something, it wouldn't be effective until the next election anyway. But we don't deal in that.
No.
So, all right.
That's reality. They don't do reality.
Oh, no. Please.
Well, the House is figuring out all of that. I mean, obviously, they're going to have to be negotiating with the Senate as this stuff is going on. But the negotiations on what apparently Johnson wants to present the Senate, are going to be short because it'll just be no.
Yeah, all right.
But because funding bills have to originate in the House, the Senate has to wait around for the House to figure out what it's going to do on funding. And they can do things potentially like put their bills on IVF protection and having IVF paid for by private health insurance or the federal government back on the floor.
Okay.
They voted on them back in June, but now they have former President Trump's, the orange guy. They have his support for those bills.
Yes, unless he changes his mind and
put them back on the
says
floor.
no.
They may or may not. I don't know. But,
we don't know what they'll do with it, and we don't know what Trump will do with it either. You supported this. We're putting on the floor in support of your position. I didn't mean what? No. Or yes, I support it, but I hate you, so no.
Yes,
he may just.
That would be it.
Yeah, I mean, that's
But
essentially
you've got
what he
somebody
has to
like
do.
Tom Cotton, I just saw saying, I think it was on Sunday, maybe it was yesterday. Yeah, I don't think this is a terrible idea with IVF.
He's really sticking his neck out there.
And a lot of neck to stick out.
There's nothing else he does, and it's certainly nothing better. So yeah, there'll be a little bit of opportunity for, Senate Democrats, like I said, they're in a holding pattern waiting for something acceptable to show up, and maybe nothing will, so they have time to put that stuff on the floor. We're not wasting time. We're waiting for House originated bills, and that's your job. Maybe you've read the Constitution at some point, maybe not, but it is in there. So if you ask us to show us where it's written in the Constitution, I can. And all right, so instead they wait around. They can do the IVF bills. What is happening with? You say you've got. Well, I guess your latest is the published pieces is Harris takes abortion fight where it hurts. Trump, Florida. I'm not certain I am up to speed on. Florida's having abortion is directly on the ballot in Florida. Is that right?
Yes.
In what form? What are they doing?
Right now in Florida, the 6-week ban is in effect, which essentially is a total ban.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because who at 6 weeks knows they're pregnant? Very few people.
Right.
So we've got the total ban now in Florida. Trump has said, I think 6 weeks is too short. This is the whole confusion he created last week when he said,
I'm confused.
Maybe he was going to vote on the constitutional amendment to guarantee rights because he thought 6 weeks was too short, and he told them so, and they didn't go with him.
Oh.
Whether any of that is true, whether he really told them that 6 weeks was too short and they should lengthen it, whether he was paying any attention at all to what the legislature was doing is doubtful. But
so he's now.
So last week he said that's too short.
Okay.
That possibly he was open to voting for the constitutional amendment that would guarantee abortion rights, which had everybody all in a worry on his side.
Yeah.
So he finally had to come out and tell the Moms for Liberty that no, he's going to be voting against this.
I'll be voting against this liberty, moms.
But I want government funding IVF. This is where he's sort of trying to split hairs. Whereas, the Moms for Liberty crowd and his vice presidential nominee, by the way, think IVF is essentially abortion because it creates these embryos that are going to be destroyed, and they're very much opposed to it.
Aha. And yet, but have we ever gotten to the bottom of this weird, the other weird thing where people were being photographed around Trump rallies or J.D. Vance appearances with the cups labeled with his face? Did you see that?
I did not see that.
Oh my goodness. I don't know how to describe this to you, Joan. Maybe it's better that I don't. But there was a brief moment, and people were puzzled over whether or not they were genuinely doing this organically or whether there was some sort of Democratic prank afoot. But they were out at Trump rallies being photographed with all their Trump gear, holding essentially specimen cups with a little label on it that said the J.D. Vance Full Family Kit. And these specimen cups were ones that such as one might find at a fertility clinic, let's say. And they were not empty. And no one knows what the hell it was. But they were running around saying, this was like, I'm so supportive of J.D. Vance's natalism and anti-abortion standards, etc. Somehow I want to be photographed with this thing. And nobody ever solved whether this was something they were really carrying around, but then the campaign punched them all in the face and said, go home, or whether it was a Democratic prank to get them to think that they were supporting the campaign by carrying these things and being photographed. One of the more, like right in the middle of these guys are just weird thing, these photos were emerging. And I mean, it's definitely weird.
It's definitely weird. I'm looking at Snopes, and apparently Snopes doesn't know necessarily where it
Yeah.
came from.
Right. Yeah. I don't think we're at the bottom of this thing, although they certainly were scraping bottom there. But yeah, I still don't know whether that was a prank or not a prank. And it could go either way because it's so weird and stupid. These people could be into it because they're weird. And anyway, I was just sort of wondering, like, so given that they're like, hey, everybody, J.D. Vance is a natalist and so virile, everybody wants to have J.D. Vance's babies, but of course, how will you be having them? Because one way would be a sex scandal for the vice presidential candidate, and the other way would be presumably problematic with the IVF issue because that's the other way. So I don't know what to, but none of this has ever made any sense. It's not like consistency was.
Okay,
you know.
Some of them that Snopes thinks were AI generated, some of them were not, but were part of an inauthentic effort to generate viral headlines. So.
Yeah, I just don't know whose inauthentic effort or,
where did
why,
this come from?
Or was it Republicans certainly do inauthentic things to try to generate, I don't know. It just didn't seem like it was fully beneficial for them, but also that they were the kind of people that wouldn't realize that. So, I don't know. But, hey, welcome back. I thought I would just surprise you with that one.
I had missed this entirely.
Good for you. I'm sorry I ruined that for you.
That's okay. Now I'm down the rabbit hole of J.D. Vance sperm.
Yeah, my goodness. I didn't think, this probably helped you, recover and regain your spirits not knowing. So hopefully you can brush this off and go right past it. And for instance, let's say we cover a different topic entirely.
We could do that.
Yeah.
What do you have in mind?
Well, let's see. What else is going on here? I'm scrolling through not only what's coming up in Congress, but what you've been covering. Let's see. There's the Sam Brown story that you were covering. Was that his claim? He too just a small town guy?
Small town guy, humble beginnings, blue collar. His family owns an NFL team, the Cincinnati Bengals.
Oh, okay.
And his family apparently has been propping him up politically for quite a while in most of his campaigns.
Okay. What's his electoral experience before? Was he a state legislator or something? Or
he's only run.
So no real political experience.
His experience is as an anti-abortion activist.
All right.
He ran for a seat in the Texas State Senate and lost.
Huh.
Then he moved to Nevada.
Yeah, and that's where he's
ran
now.
For Senate 2 years ago and lost, and is now running for Senate again.
Okay. Well, why not start with Senate?
Probably lose again. Yeah, he's not a SEAL. Was he a Ranger? He was in the military.
Okay.
Had a pretty high rank. Was horribly wounded in a fire, and his face is disfigured by that. But he's also an extreme anti-abortion forced birther.
Of course.
Extreme. And that has been that, and what's the word? Speaking engagements, motivational speaking has been primarily what he's done since he returned from the Army.
It's interesting this is a standard formula, I guess, for Republicans, although for many years after the military, they would hold jobs of various kinds or be in elective office and then seek higher elective office. But I've been thinking a lot of it lately about that J.D. Vance is as new to politics as you could possibly be. He won for the first time. I guess he ran for the first time in 2022. And just thinking about it, really hasn't sunk in with people. That guy got elected for the first time less than 2 years ago. And his second political campaign ever in his life is for the vice presidency. Mm-hmm. And that's really kind of astonishing. He's, just now turned 40 years old. And, I mean, graduated from high school, went into the military, which a lot of people do, although, a little weird to see him with the stolen valor thing for Tim Walz when he was, a military journalist attached to the Marine aviation wing, and he's not a pilot, so there was never any chance. That's why you choose that assignment. I'm not a pilot, not going into combat. Not only that,
he was not in a combat role.
But I'm not going to be near combat either because I am a military journalist for this wing. And okay, fine, whatever. People need to do that. And then
it's service,
Yale. Right, use the GI Bill as it's meant to be done,
and you don't denigrate anybody's service.
That
works for both sides.
Right,
sure.
You're not supposed to do that for anybody else, and military journalists gotta have them, so we have them, and he did it, and I didn't, so there you go. But then he uses the GI Bill as is again proper and right, and what we want you to do: get an education. Goes to college, does fantastically by all accounts, off to Yale for law school, 2 years in private practice, or I guess, he's a clerkship with a federal judge, 2 years in private practice at a white shoe firm, and then venture capitalism, and then running for Senate. And then 2 years after that, less than a third of the way through your term, I'm out of here again. This guy really hasn't held any jobs for very long. I guess the military was the longest job he's held. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I'm just astonished by this guy. I've never won anything before in my life. I'm a motivational speaker. I ran for Senate. They said, no way. Get the hell out of here. Well, maybe they didn't hear me.
So I moved to Nevada to run for federal Senate.
Yeah, right. Oh, that too. My family owns the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati, that's Nevada? Cincinnati, Nevada? No, Ohio. Okay. But you're not running for Senate in Ohio because the other guy who's never done anything is the senator from Ohio right now. But then there's a Democrat up for re-election. Where did you leave Ohio? Well, I went to Texas because Texas loves people like me who've never done anything but want to be senators. No, they don't. Maybe Nevada does. All right. Well, as it turns out, they don't either. And okay. So whatever. I don't know. It's just a weird pattern they have. I guess they always think, Republicans love outsider candidates, I guess is their thinking.
Republicans love self-funding outsider candidates.
That's what it is. Yeah, we can't raise any money for these people because they're extremists and weirdos, and there's only so much evangelical money to go around, maybe. All right. Although there's an awful lot of billionaires, but they get tired of funding everybody. Yeah. All right. I don't know. I just found him weird. But just one of another story, major theme of the election for these guys is they just keep finding weird people who have no connection to anybody or anything or even where they're running.
Right.
And they can't figure out why no one likes them.
If they can self-fund, and if Trump likes them, that's all they need.
I guess that's
McConnell identified it in 2022. They had a serious problem with candidate equality, and they went back out and did the same thing again.
Well, maybe
and in Pennsylvania again.
They had a real hard time.
You would have thought they had learned with Dr. Oz.
No, I guess not.
They went out and found McCormick, who actually lives in Connecticut.
That's another thing. It's nice that everybody's so mobile and all, and I love them living in different parts of the country.
They have Huffy, who actually lives in California.
This is crazy. Why can't they find people who live in these places? I don't know. That's very odd. All right, so anti-abortion extremists running in Nevada, where no one's concerned about, abortion, I'm sure.
It's on the ballot in Nevada too.
Yeah, right. Hey, you can get married in 10 seconds in Las Vegas, but I'm sure nobody's got any plans to undo those things. Or in need of an emergency reproductive health care. But
because, we can't have no-fault divorce anymore.
Oh, right. That too.
That's a J.D. Vance platform as well.
Yeah. I don't understand where this guy, I don't understand anything about him, but him and the I'm a natalist and what, we got to have more babies. They've got 3, which is, that's the most normal thing about them, family size.
Yes.
But I don't know. This is the second natalist I've run into who says, I plan to have 11,000 children, but I have only 3 at the moment, which that's one more than me. And I don't have any ideological program dictating any of this. But anyway, okay. Well, we got things to watch. Congress coming back and the election season rolling on. And I guess we just have to see how the crazy unfolds. And
it's going to be an interesting month.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot of investigations and people who are too busy to do any legislating.
Because Walz got married or engaged in China. He got engaged in China.
Is that where we are now on that one?
Yes, that's where
I guess so. They're into everything, trying to come up with something on Tim Walz, who just apparently, he's just a popular guy and people just don't really want to stand for this, but they'll investigate him. All right. Well, we'll find out lots of things that we like and are endearing to us in all likelihood in the course of this investigation, and then check in with you again next week as the clock ticks down towards the possibility of government shutdown. We're back in that mode.
And towards the election.
We can't avoid it. We joke about it all year until we get here, and then it's not funny anymore. All right. We'll laugh about it anyway. Check in with you next week. Hope
Alrighty.
so. All right. Take care, Joan.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
All right. Time to hand things over now to Justice Putnam, who is ready and raring to go. He went, in fact, yesterday. And today's Tuesday show. What's on tap here today? The oldest Latino civil rights group in the U.S. calling on the Department of Justice to investigate Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton's raids on their members' homes. Huge story. Good to hear.